Under the dim lights of the city's most elegant restaurant, the kind that gleamed with polished marble and whispered exclusivity, Alexander Reed sat in silence. The CEO of one of the country's largest real estate empires, Alexander was known for his sharp mind, commanding presence, and his uncanny ability to turn any venture into gold. Yet tonight, none of that mattered. The powerful man who commanded boardrooms and markets was just a lonely soul waiting for a blind date arranged by his best friend. He glanced at his watch. 7:30. She was 10 minutes late. He sighed, swirling the deep red wine in his glass. Normally, Alexander would never agree to something as unpredictable as a blind date. But after 3 years of solitude, 3 years since his fiancée had left him for another man, his friends had grown tired of watching him bury himself in work. So, they convinced him that it was time to meet someone who wasn't wearing a business suit. Her name was supposed to be Maya. A model, apparently. Beautiful, poised, and full of life. Everything he thought he wanted. Yet a strange anxiety gripped him as he waited. Maybe it wasn't excitement. Maybe it was fear that once again, love would prove to be an illusion. At exactly 7:42, the door to the restaurant opened. But instead of the stunning woman he had pictured, a nervous figure stepped in, dressed not in designer clothes but in a simple floral dress that had seen better days. Her hair was neatly tied, though a few strands fell awkwardly around her face. She looked out of place in the sea of diamonds and tailored suits, clutching a small worn-out purse. The hostess walked up to her, whispering something, and then gestured toward his table. Alexander straightened in confusion. Surely, this wasn't her. She approached slowly, almost hesitantly. Mr. Reed?" she asked softly. "Yes," he replied, puzzled. "You must be Maya." She smiled nervously. "Actually, my name is Emma. I think there's been some kind of mix-up. I was supposed to meet someone named Daniel here. For a dinner job interview. I'm so sorry if..." Alexander blinked. "A job interview?" "Yes," she nodded quickly. The ad said a man named Daniel was looking for a part-time assistant for his home office. "I thought this was the place." Her voice trembled slightly. There was a brief silence before realization dawned on him. His best friend's name was Daniel. And Daniel had said he'd take care of everything. "Oh," Alexander said slowly, suppressing a surprised laugh. "I think Daniel may have set both of us up." Her eyes widened. "Wait, you mean this isn't about a job?" He shook his head, amused yet oddly intrigued. "No. I was told this was a date." Her face turned crimson. "Oh no. Oh, this is so embarrassing. I'm so sorry, I must have looked ridiculous." She reached for her purse, fumbling to leave, but Alexander raised his hand. "Please, stay," he said gently. "Since we're both victims of Daniel's prank, we might as well enjoy the dinner." She hesitated but eventually sat down, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. The waiter arrived, and they placed their orders. As minutes passed, what started as an awkward encounter began to soften into something strangely comfortable. "So," Alexander began, "you were looking for a job." "Yes," she said quietly. "I'm a single mom. My son, Ethan, is 6. I work part-time at a cafe, but the pay barely covers rent. I thought this assistant job could help." Her honesty was disarming. Most people Alexander met either exaggerated their lives or hid behind charm. But Emma spoke plainly, without filters or pretension. "I admire that," he said sincerely. "Raising a child alone, that can't be easy." "It's not," she admitted, smiling faintly. "But the reason I wake up every day. He's my little hero." Something about the way she said it, pure, genuine, stirred something in Alexander. He had everything, wealth, status, influence, but not once in the past few years had he felt the kind of warmth she radiated when she talked about her son. As the evening went on, they talked about life, dreams, and pain. She shared stories of juggling bills, late-night study sessions to finish her degree online, and how she sometimes pretended everything was fine so her son wouldn't worry. He shared about his loneliness, how success felt meaningless without someone to come home to, and how people often saw him as a title rather than a person. They laughed unexpectedly when she accidentally spilled water and called herself the clumsiest human alive. He hadn't laughed like that in years. By the time dessert arrived, the restaurant had started to empty, and soft jazz filled the air. When she stood up to leave, she hesitated. "Thank you, Mr. Reed." I'm sorry again for the confusion. Please, he said, smiling. Call me Alexander. And thank you, for staying. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed an evening this much. She smiled shyly. You're not what I expected from a CEO. And you, he replied, are not what I expected from a blind date. But I think I prefer it this way. That night, as she walked home through the cool night air, Emma couldn't stop smiling. And neither could Alexander, though he didn't quite understand why. The next morning, he couldn't get her out of his head. The simplicity, the warmth, the quiet resilience. He found himself wondering how she was doing, whether she had managed to find the job she needed. So, without overthinking, he called Daniel. You're unbelievable, he said. You sent the wrong woman. Daniel laughed. Wrong. Or maybe exactly the one you needed. Alexander sighed. She's different. Then maybe don't let her slip away, Daniel said knowingly. 2 days later, Alexander made a call to his HR department. I'm hiring a new assistant, he said. Her name's Emma Brooks. I'll handle the interview personally. When she walked into his office, her eyes went wide. Mr. Reed. He smiled warmly. Please, it's Alexander. And this time, it's an actual job interview. She blushed, then laughed. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he interrupted. You said you were looking for a chance. Consider this one. At first, she hesitated. Working for him felt intimidating. But something in his eyes told her it wasn't pity, it was genuine respect. So she accepted. Weeks turned into months, and their professional relationship began to evolve into something deeper. She was efficient, organized, and had an uncanny ability to understand his moods. When his temper flared during stressful meetings, she'd bring him coffee and remind him to breathe. When he worked late, she'd quietly stay back, reviewing reports or fixing small details he overlooked. But it wasn't just about work. There were quiet moments, when he'd walk her to her car, or when she'd tell him stories about Ethan's school projects. Slowly, his once cold, sterile office began to feel alive again. Ethan adored him too. One afternoon, when Emma had to bring her son to the office, Alexander surprised them both by building a Lego skyscraper with the boy in the conference room. The sight of the powerful CEO sitting cross-legged on the carpet, laughing as he built with a child, melted Emma's heart. It wasn't long before she realized she was falling for him. And though she tried to deny it, because he was her boss, because they lived in different worlds, her heart betrayed her every time he smiled. Alexander, too, was torn. He hadn't planned for this. He had sworn off love, but Emma had quietly slipped into his life and stolen his heart without even trying. One night, after another long day, they found themselves alone in the office. She was gathering her things when he said softly, Emma, wait. She turned. He took a deep breath. I need to tell you something. When I first met you, I thought you were a mistake. A mix-up. But now I realize, that night might have been the best accident of my life. Her heart pounded. Alexander. I know it's complicated, he said, his voice low and earnest. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way. Tears welled in her eyes. You deserve someone who belongs in your world. I'm just. Stop, he said gently. You belong wherever your heart takes you. And right now, mine's with you. The silence that followed was filled with all the words neither had said before. And in that stillness, the walls that once separated them crumbled. Months later, the tabloids exploded with the news. The lonely CEO finds love with a single mom. Paparazzi tried to spin it as a scandal, but Alexander didn't care. He held Emma's hand through every whisper, every headline, every judgment. They moved in together quietly, focusing on what truly mattered, building a home filled with laughter and love. Ethan often teased them, calling Alexander, Mr. Fancy Suit, until one day he slipped and called him, Dad. Alexander froze, then smiled, pulling the boy into a hug. You have no idea how much that means to me. For the first time in years, he felt whole. Not because of wealth or power, but because of the family he never knew he needed. One rainy evening, standing on their balcony overlooking the city lights, Emma turned to him. Do you ever think about that first night? All the time, he said, wrapping his arm around her. I thought I was meeting a model. She laughed softly. And instead, you got a single mom who almost spilled water on your suit. He smiled. Best mistake of my life. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. You really think so? He kissed her forehead. I don't think so. I know so. Because that night, I didn't just meet someone by accident. I met the woman who stole my heart. And as the rain whispered against the glass, they held each other close, proof that sometimes, love doesn't arrive dressed in perfection or luxury. Sometimes, it shows up unexpectedly, wearing a faded dress and a shy smile, and changes everything forever.